Dream Air SE is finally here and now going into mass production. Here's a final production sample, including retail packaging from the first batch, and I'm one of the first internal testers of this unit. Today I'll give you my first look and my first hands-on impressions. Many of you out there are familiar with the specifications, but for starters, I want to quickly explain how the Dream Air SE differs from Dream Air, or the flagship model. The Dream Air SE is kind of a Dream Air on budget alternative, but not exactly in the way you might expect. Yes, it has some lower specification on paper, but I would claim the biggest difference you will feel between those two is the price, since the SE costs roughly half the price of what the original Dream Air does. Looking from the outside, you quickly realize that the form factor and design are identical between these two, even down to a single millimeter in dimensions. We still got the integrated and market-leading Tobii eye tracking technology that supports DFR, or dynamic foveated rendering, both variable rate shading and quad views of course. Motorized IPD is still there, physically moving the lenses to adjust IPD between 58 and 72 millimeters. Now, this is the Lighthouse tracking compatible version of SE without those 4 tracking cameras. And just like the Dream Air, there will be a separate version equipped with slam tracking with 2 bundled controllers using 4 tracking cameras and also allowing for monochrome pass-through. Besides the main headset unit, the currently included 2D soft strap, the sidearms with built-in audio, the cable with its split box, and also the facial interface are all the same on the Dream Air. It has the same modularity of course thanks to the USB-C connectors on each side, so I guess all accessories and alternative straps from Dream Air will be compatible with the SE as well. And no, this is not the latest facial interface or face mask that you have seen MRTV Sebastian recently testing out. Later on, I will explain why. What's replaced on the SE are the Sony micro OLED panels and the bigger concave view lenses. And that's basically it. The reason is obviously that the bigger Dream Air lenses were specifically made for those physically larger Sony micro OLED panels on the Dream Air. The SE model is housing 2 smaller micro OLED panels running a native resolution of 2560 by 2560 pixels per eye instead of Dream Air's 3840 by 3552 pixels per eye. It's still micro OLED technology, giving you all the benefits of pure blacks, crazy contrast levels, popping OLED colors, zero Mura of course, and very high pixel density, producing less aliasing and a cleaner image in general. But here comes perhaps the only compromise with the SE, which can be significant. To achieve a native resolution signal with the SE, the headset runs a refresh rate of 72 Hz instead of 90. Well, yeah, the Dream Air SE does have 90 Hz available, but it's locked to an upscale mode, which means that at 90 Hz, the panels are processing a lower rendered resolution of 1920 by 1920 pixels per eye, which is then internally upscaled of course onto the panels to 2560 by 2560 per eye. Remember, the physical pixel density of these panels stays the same of course, only the rendered image is getting upscaled when running 90 Hz, and you can always supersample the resolution in SteamVR or Pimax Play. I guess you are familiar with this approach if you have tried VR headsets from some other known brands. Then these lenses. The pancake lenses of the SE are noticeably smaller compared to the huge concave view lenses you've seen on the Dream Air. You may think this will limit the field of view, but I bet you will be surprised once I present you with the values. Okay, so now when we know the difference between the SE and the original Dream Air flagship, the question is how much impact does the replaced panels and lenses have on the image quality, the clarity, and the VR experience in general? Look, as I said in the Pimax presentation not long ago, I'm a picky nerd and enthusiast. I truly love clarity of the original Dream Air, and even thinking about stepping down to a cheaper headset with the lower resolution and smaller lenses, potentially even smaller field of view, made me a bit skeptic. I understand it's all about balancing price versus performance ratio, and the whole point of introducing a kind of a budget but still high-end Dream Air alternative. But initially I wasn't expecting much, and I thought SE just wasn't for me. But I was proven wrong, and I admit that now. From the first moment I put on the Dream Air SE, it once again hit me how micro OLED displays have changed the game with VR. My first reaction was like, dang, this looks really good. I even said it loud to myself, I think. I was positively surprised, but also a bit confused, because what I saw looking around in Steam VR Home was very familiar with what I'm used to seeing on a daily basis with the Dream Air. A VR view very comfortable on my eyes, with incredible contrast, popping colors, perfect blacks, where it's supposed to be black of course, and just a really satisfying quality overall. The distortion profile is excellent here, without any edge warping or geometry issues. I cannot really find anything to nitpick on here. Yes, the resolution is lower indeed, and even though I am getting old, I still have 20/20 vision, so I do see a difference. But it isn't that obvious until you start to look at small text or very fine details, especially further away. It's not like going back to previous lower resolution headsets, seeing that slight screen door effect you previously believed wasn't there. No, it's not even close. There is no visible screen door effect at all with the Dream Air SE, I can tell you that. All I see is an extremely sharp and crisp image with surprisingly high clarity at distance despite the lower resolution. The pixel density of these tiny micro OLED panels clearly makes up for the smaller number of pixels in front of you. Because I must claim that aliasing, edge shimmering, jaggies, or whatever you may call it, are hardly more noticeable here than with the original Dream Air running at default render resolution. I was indeed expecting more jaggies and more pronounced pixel structure in bright environments, on white text and tiny objects, so I am impressed. Half-Life Alyx looks almost as amazing as it does with the Dream Air, with perfect clarity and no aliasing. Lucky's Tale, for example, is beautiful thanks to those micro OLED popping colors and contrast. Also here, no signs of jaggies, at least in high in-game settings. Watching movies on the Dream Air SE is a blast. I tried that, and the slight glare never distracts me at all. Oh, and it is obvious that the 72Hz mode is optimal for 24 frames per second movies and series. The cockpits and outside views in both Microsoft Flight Simulator and Digital Combat Simulator may obviously not be as super crisp as they are with the Dream Air due to a lower resolution. But the way this headset renders the image on these panels is rather impressive. It's not fully on par with the Sony micro OLED from the Dream Air, but again, going from any other headset to the SE will surely impress you. I have a few notes though. At the time of testing, the colors are deep and popping but not perfectly calibrated yet. The image does have a slightly warmer tone, but I heard it's getting worked on by the engineers in the software. Also, I do think that the panels feel slightly dimmer compared to the Dream Air. Not by much really, but I have a feeling that the image never gets as bright on the SE. Maybe it is the result of smaller optics, or maybe it's something that the team is still working on. I will keep you updated regarding these two aspects. There is obviously no mirror visible or any other distractions at all. Image is perfectly clean, as I said. I also don't see any distracting color tint at the edges. On the SE, I really do not see that. Glare and God rays are somewhat more visible compared to what I'm used to on the Dream Air, and that is probably the result of smaller pancake lenses used. It's not enough glare to distract me, so it's also not a deal breaker in my opinion. Then the field of view. There's only one default profile available as of now, and it's really not bad. In fact, I thought that the vertical field of view felt wider than what I'm used to. And when I ran the HMDQ tool test, I got it confirmed, almost 105 degrees horizontally and exactly 93 degrees vertically. Yes, the vertical field of view is larger here, not by much really, but still wide enough to feel the difference. Binocular overlap is 80 degrees, which is indeed on the lower side of the spectrum, but it doesn't really feel different from what I'm used to with the Dream Air. Anyway, I guess we will see other field of view and overlap profiles coming to the SE soon, and I will definitely elaborate with the engineers to find ways to maximize the binocular overlap, of course, for people that prefer it. Now, so let's get into it. In my opinion, the most important and the most exciting aspect of the Dream Air SE: resolution and game performance. At Pimax Play resolution set to high or 1.0, we get 3116 by 3072 pixels per eye. I know it may sound like a lot of pixels, but compare this to the Dream Air and its default 110-degree field of view mode, rendering almost 22 million pixels per eye on default. The Dream Air SE is literally rendering less than 50% total pixels onto the displays. The question is, does this translate to double frame rate performance? Well, I will give you a small hint in a moment. But first, how about 90 Hz upscale mode we talked about earlier? Once enabled, SE renders 2352 by 2320 pixels per eye, which is around 5.5 million pixels per eye, or 11 pixels in total. Crazy potential for smooth performance on mid-range or even low-end GPUs, I would say. And you know what? It doesn't even look bad in upscale mode. In fact, I am surprised how clean it looks with the reduced base resolution rendered and then upscaled to the panels. Sure, I mean, we lose that extreme sharpness and clarity a bit from the native 72 Hz mode, but the image just looks clean and polished without introducing much blur or fuzziness. It's totally playable. Maybe not as much in DCS World and Microsoft Flight Simulator, where you expect the perfect clarity of gauges in the cockpit or scenery at distance, but in casual VR games or even Racing Simulator, it really looks good. And it gives you that performance you've always been missing out. I am working on separate videos with the game and simulator benchmarks going deep into the performance side of the Dream Air SE, both native and upscale mode. But meanwhile, take a look at this example. In an early video not long ago, I tested Assetto Corsa Rally with the Dream Air. But that was when trying the vertical field of view crop using native SVoice 3 SteamVR driver. We used a different resolution, different field of view, and different runtime, so forget about that now. This time, let's stick to the out-of-the-box performance, using Pimax Play and Pimax OpenXR as renderer. Although I will keep identical in-game settings, which are pretty high as you can tell, including latest DLSS 4.5 set to quality. With the original Dream Air at 110 degrees field of view and native resolution with image quality set to high or 1.0, we average 40 plus frames per second. Let's say between 40 and 43 frames per second on average. It's fully playable, I would say, but far from optimal. Switching to the Dream Air SE at default native resolution and 72 Hz, the average frame rate is literally 72 frames per second. Yes, we are maxing out the game and running butter smooth Assetto Corsa Rally in VR at full resolution. And it just looks super sharp and realistic with no visible aliasing. When running 90 Hz upscale mode on the SE, we are in fact kind of stuck at 90 frames per second, most of the time a very smooth race with the same in-game settings. We do occasionally drop a couple of frames, but mostly we are at 90. Although the image is not as super sharp in this case due to the low resolution rendered, but still almost no jagged edges thanks to DLSS 4.5, and this is not even a native VR game. Once again, I think this is why many will go for the Dream Air SE. The vastly better performance combined with already exceptional image quality and clarity, it will also allow many people with mid-range GPUs to finally enjoy high-end VR at better or even maxed out frame rates, no matter if you run upscale or native mode. Again, more in-depth tests and benchmarks, including eye tracking, are coming up soon, so let's leave it at that for today. So how about audio then? The built-in 3D spatial audio speakers are identical to Dream Air's and in my opinion surprisingly good overall for gaming and even watching movies. Yes, there will be optional strap solutions available with better audio headphones such as DMAS, compatible with both the Dream Air and the Dream Air SE. But in my opinion, the current built-in audio is already way better than the old S-mess we had with the previous Pimax headsets. Much better audio now. Lastly, if there's one thing I won't talk much about today, then it's comfort and especially the facial interface we've got here. Comfort is already great, as many people has pointed out already, since it's identical to the Dream Air. The weight difference between these two is also minimal. The currently bundled facial interface with this SE model is the same as I tested earlier with the Dream Air. It works, although it's far from perfect and does limit my maximum field of view a bit unless I really push my face against it. But you know that there is a new facial interface going into production that will replace this current one. The new one is thinner and more comfortable, also allowing for wider visible field of view. The new and improved facial interface will get shipped out with every order, eventually bundled with the headset once it's in stock, or sent separately if you are getting the SE early from the first batches. Already now there are third-party options available at printables.com, as well as accessories from Studioform. So, how do I sum up my first impressions? I think that micro OLED VR panels and pancake lenses are now here to stay, as they're clearly #1 choice for the best possible and the most immersive VR experience without major compromises. And what Pimax has come up with the Dream Air SE is rather impressive, especially considering the price. This is a high-end headset, including micro OLED technology, Tobii eye tracking, and most of what you see on the Dream Air flagship. But it's also accessible to a way broader audience thanks to the significantly lower price. And you don't even need a high-end PC, which I will prove in the upcoming videos. The trade-offs from the Dream Air aren't as radical or punishing as you would expect, quite the opposite. I said it in the recent presentation, I'll say it again. You pay roughly 50% of the price and get, in my opinion at least, 80% of what the Dream Air is offering in terms of visuals, the image quality, and its features. All packed in a small form factor with identical design, same comfort, and modularity. A pretty dang good deal if you ask me. You may call it a Dream Air on a budget, while I would say it's more of an unmatched value proposition from Pimax. I think we now have a winner in this specific VR segment. But that's just my opinion as an enthusiast, a 44-year-old VR geek, and also a Pimax representative. What do you think about the Dream Air SE? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for more SE content coming up, and I'll see you in the next one.